They put me in ICU that night because I basically flatlined, and they brought in the pastor to come pray over me because they thought I was going to die.
Welcome to another episode of the Wichita Life Podcast. This is Landon. Today's episode is brought to you by Il Primo Espresso Cafe. Il Primo is located at Central and Woodlawn in Wichita and is the oldest coffee shop in Wichita. Stop by and check out their lavender cream soda or even their cinnamon delight cold brew. This is part one of an interview with some members of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. This episode, I spoke with Hannah and her father, Scott. Hannah is a survivor of acute lymphoblastic leukemia and is currently a junior in high school. This is not something I know a lot about, but here are a few statistics about blood cancer. Every 3 minutes, one person in the U.S. is diagnosed with blood cancer. An estimated 176,200 people in the U.S. are expected to be diagnosed this year. The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society helps lead research to help cure cancer. We talk about Hannah's experience with chemo, treatment, and her experience overcoming this illness. Hannah's story is really inspiring, and I'm excited to share it with all of you. Enjoy my conversation with Hannah and her father, Scott. All right, so this is Landon, and I'm here with Hannah and her father, Scott. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very well.
Very good. So can you guys just tell a little bit about yourself? You're in high school, what year you are, where you go, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm a junior at Mays High School, and I am super excited to finally be back in high school because for the past couple of years I haven't been able to go to school due to my illness, and so going to school full time is definitely a new thing, which shouldn't be a new thing for a kid, but it's definitely a fun experience because I'm just more grateful to be there and not lay in bed sick.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So what do you like to do? Hobbies? What do you do?
Currently in school, I take debate. I love talking and just speaking in front of people. I know that's a big fear for some people, but it's something that is really in my comfort zone. So I like to do it. So I try to express as much as I can.
Nice. Very cool. All right. So part of the reason we're here is just to kind of tell your story, get it out there, words of wisdom, stuff you've learned, and just the experience in general. So, can you just talk about what you had, what illness you did have, and go into that a little bit?
Yeah. So I had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is a type of blood cancer. And when I was first diagnosed, they described it like, well, Dad, do you remember how they described it? I bet you remember better than me.
Well, the leukemia attacks the cells that would typically fight any kind of infection or sickness or illness that you would have. And so it masks those cells, and your body thinks it has those cells, but in theory or in reality, it doesn't have those cells. And that's why people get into trouble with this disease. And so, getting the illness, it's difficult to diagnose. It masks itself as just a normal flu or just exhaustion sometimes. And it can be difficult to find until you take that blood test and dig deeper into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how did you find out about that? How old were you, and what did that look like finding out?
Well, I was in 8th grade at the time. I was just starting 8th grade year, and being 13, I honestly just thought I had the flu, and I was doing my normal things. I was really big into music theater at the time and dance, so I would go to dance classes. I would go to Tech Week for music theater, and I would do shows, and honestly, I just thought I was just exhausted physically. Yeah. And my mom, that's what she thought, and she's like, oh, it's just the flu, you'll be fine. And we were like, okay, we can get through this 1 week. We can put on the show and then rest a little bit.
Sure.
And so we did that. And then after the show was done, we went to the doctor, and they're like, oh, I think you have mono. We should probably run a blood test. And so they run the blood test, and they're like, oh, I think you need to go to the hospital. And so we ended up going to the hospital thinking I still had mono. Well, we get there, and they bring us into this nice room, and it was really cool because I had a gift basket on the bed already. I was like, dang, this is really cool. I get to stay here overnight. They're going to give me food. It's going to be good. And then all these nurses start walking in, and then a doctor and 2 doctors and residents. And
Right.
at the time I didn't know what residents were, but all these doctors started coming in my room, and one comes out from behind them and he sits at the foot of my bed and he says, "Hannah, you are diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia." And my first reaction is I told him, I go, "Wow, that was like ripping off a Band-Aid." Like, it kind of was like bitter how fast they were able just to diagnose
Yeah,
you.
no
But
kidding.
my mom started crying, obviously, because my parents both were just very emotional that day, and I didn't know what it was, to be honest. So I was still confused. I think I was just shocked because I knew it was bad, and I knew it wasn't like gonna be easy. I just knew I had to learn about what I was gonna go through and learn how I was gonna do it and how I was gonna beat it. So I never once doubted that I would not beat it. I always tried to look to the positive side.
Yeah. So was it just fear, like the initial thought when you heard it, or was it just confusion? Because when I hear that, I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's like life-threatening. Is that what that looks like?
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, okay, what is that? I just didn't know what it was. So the child life specialist had to come in, and she came in with her little baggie, and it was called leukemia soup, something like that. And she basically put all these fake cells into a bag, and she's like, "This is what is happening in your body right now," and was trying to explain it to me. And I was like, this is really weird. Okay.
Yeah, and of course they diagnose it as the lymphoblastic leukemia. Well, to us, we didn't even know what that was.
Right.
It was fear, obviously, of okay, what is that? And
they
never even mentioned the word cancer, so we didn't really assimilate the two. And of course, once we started doing the research, then we realized, oh, this is
right. Yeah.
And props to my dad. I mean, he stayed up all night, some nights, just researching and trying to figure out what was the best cure and what were the best methods and what should I be eating, what should I not be eating, looking at other survivors, watching their Facebooks and seeing how they battled it. And I mean, honestly, he could be a med student. Not gonna lie. I don't know why he hasn't gotten his PhD.
So are there different stages to this type of leukemia, or?
Not with leukemia.
Okay.
If you're diagnosed with leukemia, it's kind of all the same.
Okay.
You can get diagnosed later.
Sure.
And that is more deadly because the later you find out, the harder it is. And when you're older, it's the harder.
Yeah.
Because if you get it when you're really young, I say easier. It's not easy, but it's a lot easier on the body compared to someone who is older. So when I was diagnosed, I was a high risk because I had been getting older and I had been developed as a teenager, and so just being labeled as almost an adult was just considered high risk.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you said you kind of looked at the positive side of things. Is that something you've kind of always been? Is that support from family? Where did that come from?
I mean, I like to think of myself as a positive, upbeat person. I hope people see me that way. But honestly, I really couldn't have done it without my family. My family was there with me the whole time, many nights at the hospital, just laying there by me, holding my hand, scratching my back, literally. Yeah. And just being there for me.
Sure.
Yeah, the support network definitely comes through family. Was very important, and our church. We had a lot of people from church that were always there for us. So, and of course, just work and friends.
Yeah.
That all supported us.
Yes.
Yeah, it's important. So you find out, you kind of start doing some research on your own. Do you jump straight into treatment, or what does that process look like?
You kind of do have to jump straight into treatment. I mean, once they even think you got it, you got to jump in because it's a fast spreading cell, so you don't want to wait on that. So I think the second day I was in the hospital, they started putting stuff in me.
Yeah, they do some preparatory stuff. I mean, she needed a port, so she had surgery to have a port put in. But other than that, they get started right away.
Sure. So what all is that treatment entail then? Is it pills, shots? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, the first thing they did was enter an IV, of course. And so a lot of fluids were going through me first to prep my body just for the new, the chemo to go in, basically, because you cannot be dehydrated when it goes in. So obviously the first thing they did was saline. And then intravenously they put a lot of different types of chemo in first, and one of them, this is gonna sound really crazy, but one of them like smelled like cat pee, and all the nurses out here, you'll know exactly what it is, but it smells disgusting. And then they'll bring in another one, and then they'll be like, okay, well, we have to shut the windows because it's very sensitive to sunlight, and I don't want you to like breathe near it, and don't like touch it, and like this is going in my body, and like you're putting this inside of me, and you're like not wanting me like to even go near it. So it's kind of crazy how like they'll put the gown on and the gloves, like heavy duty gloves, and I'm like, you're putting this inside me.
No kidding, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like straight,
pretty scary.
Straight chemicals, straight poison. It's kind of crazy.
Can you talk a little bit more about like the chemo itself? Because I personally don't know what that looks like, and a lot of people I don't think really know what that looks like. They just know it is hard on the body.
So chemo is not just one drug. I realized before I thought chemo was all just one, that you just got chemo, but there are different types. One of them was called Ondansen, and it was labeled as the Red Devil. Is that the one? Yeah. That's the one, and it's red. It goes in red, and then like whenever your body would release fluid, so when you sweat or like when you peed or cried, it would all be red.
Oh, wow.
So like you would have like, if you wore a white shirt, it would be pink by the end of the night. It's kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
I found it fascinating, but it was also like it made your stomach feel like cookie dough, and that's what made me throw up, and that's one of the chemos that made me lose my hair, and it's just because that one was so hazardous.
Yeah.
So I mean, there were chemos that I took that didn't affect anything. I mean, besides just killing the blood cells and killing that off. And so there were chemos that I would take later on in treatment that I would still be taking chemo, but I'd still have my hair because it wasn't so bad on like the cells that produce hair cells and like follicles and stuff like that. But chemo is a drug that does not target a certain thing. It just goes in and kills everything.
Right.
So that is why I lose my hair. It wasn't because of the cancer. It was because of the chemo. And so with that, I lost all of my hair. But I also, fun fact, pimples are a fast-growing cell, so I had the clearest skin. So that was pretty cool.
Didn't know that either.
There were pros. I'm telling you, there were very thin linings, but you can look at the bright side very thinly. And so I had pretty clear skin. That was fun. Not shaving my legs was nice. I never had to worry about my hair. Always had the best hair.
Yeah, and the regimen calls for, let's say for a 3-month period, you take 3 different drugs over that period of time. And then for, 3-4 months after that, you would take 3 or 4 different drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
And then along with that drug that you're taking, you could take a steroid. It just depends on the phase that you're in.
Yeah.
The chemo really stands for just a drug regimen. It's not a particular drug. It's just a drug regimen that you're under. So all these different drugs that you're taking, some of them are a little bit more lethal than the others, so to speak. So like she said, there's some that just go in and they go after the fast growing cells and attack them pretty heavy, and then they throw a steroid on top of that, so it accelerates it basically. And some, she could take and handle, and some just completely knocked her out. No energy, no desire to eat anything because it's just going to come right back up. So, there were periods where she lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And, we are with her every day, and so we can, we don't really see how intense it is because it's more gradual to us. But I mean, there was some periods where we would look back at pictures and be like, "Wow, I didn't realize, how bad that was." But they can be kind of harmful.
One of the more lethal ones was methotrexate, and you have to do that one in heavy doses. And so you would get, it was like a gallon-sized bag of just this yellow fluids, and when it went in you, like you were fine as it went in, but like later on throughout the day, you'd start feeling really bad. Well, my body didn't react well to that drug, and so it caused mouth sores all down my, what was that called?
Gastral tract.
So I wasn't able to like swallow anything. And they weren't able to put a feeding tube down me either because I wasn't eating because it hurt so bad, and my lips blistered so bad that like I couldn't even open them. So my lips were honestly like glued shut for a solid 14 days. And so I wasn't eating, and I hardly was drinking. They put saline through me. Well, they decided to put vitamin K in, which is healthy, right? Vitamins.
Mm-hmm.
But you can definitely get allergic to that really quick. And
Yeah,
so
it caused anaphylactic shock.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And of course it says, if administered through IV, there's a rare
risk.
instance where you could have anaphylactic shock.
Right.
Of course she had that, so.
I just have really bad luck. I don't know. I don't know. I may need to try the lottery if I can win those little slivers like that.
Is a lot of the treatment, can you do that at home, or do you have to go in every time?
You
It's
have
an
to go in.
option.
Most of it's in, but a lot of it was, outpatient.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Fortunately, we had a doctor that believed in as much outpatient time as possible, and there's truth to that. If a child or an individual can be outside and at home and in the comfort of their own home, they tend to have a little bit more better feel about taking the drugs and stuff. So
I definitely felt better in my bed than in a hospital
Right.
bed.
I can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going into your junior year. You found out about this 8th grade, and then I believe you just finished your treatment this past spring. Is that right?
Yes. Last February was my last treatment.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank
so
you.
what
Thank
does
you.
that look like moving forward then? Do you still have checkup appointments every so often? What does that look like?
I go every month for a blood test, and they'll test just my red blood count, my white blood count, and my platelets to see if anything is out of the ordinary, and they'll check they'll just check those counts and see, if anything's out of the ordinary. So, yeah.
Sure.
And that's once a month, and that'll be for a year, I think, and then it goes to quarterly visits, and then 6-month visit, and then annual visits.
Slowly, yeah.
Yep.
So is there a good shot that it's gone then, or are there any statistics on this specific leukemia or anything about the remission? I don't know, anything like that.
We've had a bone marrow test, and that shows that she's in full remission, which means it's gone. Certainly a chance of remission. There's never, you're never kind of out of the woods fully. There's always that chance, but based on the results and the numbers, things look good. But like I said, that's always a chance.
Right. So the two or so 3 years, what did school look like? Was that just doing it on your own while you're in the hospital? Could you go to school at all?
My parents tried not necessarily to force me, but to urge me to go and socialize as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I'm a very social person, but during those times I just wanted to be at home,
Yeah.
honestly. And I would go every once in a while, very slim chance that I'd go. And 8th grade year, all in all, I think I went to school like 2 months, like adding it all together. I'd go like twice a month if it was a good month. And of course, when I would go, everybody would get excited and they'd want to come up and hug me, and everybody would come up and see me, and that just scared my parents because kids are germy.
Right.
They're carriers, not gonna lie.
Yeah, makes sense.
So everybody coming up to me was very dangerous because they were carrying germs that they didn't even know they had or could give to me. And and it just made me like nervous overall because it was just a lot at one time. And taking all these different drugs, I was never myself because my mind was just everywhere from taking all these drugs. So I was either really hyper or like really tired or just kind of confused all the time.
Yeah.
It was never like a set mindset.
I hate to tell you that, but you're like that all the time anyway. So.
I'm hyper now.
Yeah.
But like, thanks.
So are you caught up then? Are you like at the kind of same base starting point of your junior year then, or are you step back a little bit?
Actually, we were just talking about this on the car ride here. I loved my teachers very much in middle school and freshman year. They were very nice and they would never overload me with work, but I just realized that I never hardly did any work in those classes, and now here I am, algebra 2, not really knowing algebra. They brought in the pastor to pray over me. I'm kind of learning all of it at once, which 100% is possible. I can do it, but it's also something that I look back on and was like, hey, maybe I should have done that worksheet, or maybe I should have just tried. But
Well, in considering the state of being, it wasn't you weren't retaining knowledge.
Yeah.
You weren't like, so, hey, I'm going to need this to know next year to help me next year. It was get through what we can to get it done and
Absolutely.
move to the next, step.
Yeah.
So.
Honestly, at that point, we were just thinking about survival.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's a new challenge.
Yep.
What's been the hardest part of the last few years? Is there a specific thing or just everything all at once?
The hardest part was probably Valentine's Day that couple years ago was when I had the anaphylactic shock from methotrexate, and they put me in ICU that night because I basically flatlined, and they brought in the pastor to come pray over me because they thought I was going to die. So they had to do the code blue button, and all the doctors rushed into my room, and I was brought into a CT scan, and that was probably the scariest moment of my whole treatment.
Yeah, most difficult time. Aside from that, it's just trying to live some, instance of a normal life during a period that's absolute turmoil. So, that's, you've got another child that's healthy, and you're trying to make sure that he's well cared for as well, but at the same time that's almost impossible. So those were the tough challenges as far as parents go. But and I know for her it's just battling those different drugs, and not only physically but emotionally it does a lot to you. So you can't really be yourself. So
how has it changed who you guys are, Hannah, Scott, or just the family dynamic? How has the last couple of years changed you guys, for the better or worse?
Well, I keep telling my dad I've had the best summer ever because I look at all the little things and I'm happy about them. Like sunny days, I get so happy. Going to the pool, I haven't been able to swim in 2 years. This is the first summer I've been able to swim. So trust me, I was at the pool every day. And I got a lecture that I'm getting too much sun, but I have enjoyed every moment of it.
Yeah, you take a lot for granted, but you also just realize, hey, life is precious. Things
really
like
is.
A quiz at school aren't so important. So maybe you could chill out a little bit more about stuff like that. So
what advice would you have for other people with leukemia, the specific kind, or just in general, or especially middle school or high school age? Because the majority of people will never have to go through that, let alone at that age.
I hope not. Advice.
It's a scary diagnosis.
It is scary.
It's beatable. The best thing that an individual that gets it can do is be positive as much as possible. We've seen some people go through it, and your first instinct is why me, and you kind of get down about it. Okay, this kind of sucks for me and my life, but at the end of the day, you got to deal with it. And I think Hannah really understood that. It's kind of like, okay, I've been dealt a hand here. I'm going to play it, and I'm going to do the best I can with it and beat it. So.
And you just take something that's honestly awful, and you just turn it into something that can motivate people. So if you can try to do that, that's what you need to do. And of course, there were kids that couldn't get over the why me. I feel so bad for myself, and that was heartbreaking because you could see how much worse they were doing because of how they thought.
Yeah.
And mentally, that's just the worst state of mind you can be in during that. You don't want to be in that state of mind. You need to get over it. You need to get upon it and just go with it and learn how to cope with it, and have family with you. That was how I stayed so positive.
Yeah, we've met some amazing people through this, and that's been one of the huge blessings. And at the end of the day, she's created a nonprofit to try to help kids that come out of treatment and try to get them a normal life again. And so that's a piece that we're still pushing ahead with. So some incredible things have happened through it.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What's the nonprofit, the name of it, what the goal is?
So when I was first diagnosed, the doctors were strong about creating a Facebook page just so my mom wasn't overwhelmed with text messages of how I was doing. And so people could just see little updates. And so they're like, yeah, a lot of kids do like fight for Hannah's battle, very basic, like Hannah's journey, just something very basic. It doesn't have to be crazy, but I am a very crazy person. And so I like to go over the top with everything. And at the time, I really liked The Little Mermaid. And so I was like, how about even mermaids get leukemia? Because they told me it doesn't matter who you are, you can get it. Like, there's not a single thing. We don't know much about the illness. Anybody can get it. So I was like, okay, even mermaids get leukemia. And so that was the name of my battle page. And so going along with it, it became really catchy and it caught on. And so when I do my fundraisers with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society during the Light the Night Walk, my tent is a mermaid theme. And it's really fun because all the little girls, especially all the little girls, love it. And I love seeing them. They're adorable. But I decided to roll with that as my nonprofit. And so like you were talking about how getting back into the swing of things it was honestly really hard for me at first because I mean, I had to make all new friends because my friends aren't the same as they were in 7th grade. And I had to go and just basically start over. Yeah. And I just started from scratch. And I was like, this is really hard because I started from scratch physically and emotionally and mentally. I hardly had any muscle. And so just getting everything back up again was really hard. So I was like, I don't think it should be this hard for everyone. And so I was like, we need to create a nonprofit that helps at the end of treatment because there's so many that help during and at the beginning, but there's none towards the end. And so I wanted to create something that I could help someone. So what my nonprofit does is basically if a kid wants to go and take baseball during the end of their treatment or at the end and they don't have enough money to pay for it, we can help them and basically pay for a first year of batting practice, or that's awesome. If they want to do cheer, pay for their cheer uniform and tumbling lessons. Just something that can help them get back. And it doesn't even have to be like a sport. It can be like guitar lessons if they want to go play guitar. Like just something to help them get social again.
Right. I love that. That's really cool. So how does the Light the Night tie in with that? And then what's your favorite part of Light the Night?
Well, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society actually reached out to us while I was going through fighting cancer, and they're just an amazing organization that was like, hey, we do this thing called Light the Night and we would really like you to come speak if you would be willing to. And I was like, of course, like that would be something I'd really be interested in because I thought, hey, I like public speaking, I could give it a whirl. And so I wrote my own speech and I talked about how being diagnosed as basically what we're talking about here now. And I really enjoyed it. The Light the Night Walk was nothing like I expected, honestly. I kind of thought, oh, it's just going to be a lot of kids and adults like me feeling sorry for themselves. We're just going to sit there and cry. But no, it was a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. It was honestly, like, I just don't know how to explain it. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you get exposed to see how many people are affected by the blood cancers for sure. Not only that, you know, people have lost battles, but have beat battles and are going through the battle, and all of the family and relationships that intertwine with those folks. And that was pretty cool to see. And then, of course, you know, what a great setting, downtown Wichita with all the lanterns and walking around
seeing all the lanterns and walking was really beautiful. And all the different colors, because, like, the survivors would have a white one. Is that correct? Yes, the survivors would have a white one, and then all the other family members would have red ones. And it was really cool to see how many white ones there were and how many red ones, because honestly, you don't know who's affected until you're, like, sitting there and you're just like, wow, they went through it and they look amazing. Like, the girl right across from me has a white lantern, and she literally looks like she has been the healthiest person in the entire world.
Yeah, and they've been a beacon of help throughout the whole process. We've certainly not only referenced the website, but reached out to the folks that are involved with LLS, and they've helped us along the way as well. So been a great resource.
Very cool. I'll definitely link up the Light the Night details. We'll talk about it more here in a little bit, but and also your nonprofit. That's really cool.
Thank you.
we'll just mix it up just a couple other questions real quick. So these are some questions I kind of tag on every podcast. So if you guys want to talk about them, we can. If not, no worries. Is there something you often recommend to people, like books, movies, TV shows, anything like that?
I'm probably the biggest Disney fan you'll ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love Disney. 100% recommend going to Disney World once in your life. Doesn't matter how old you are. You should go. Definitely.
I haven't been yet, so
oh my gosh.
I definitely need to go.
Oh my gosh. You need to go.
It's on the bucket list.
It's a bucket list item for sure. Doesn't matter how grumpy you are, you need to go. It'll cheer you up right away.
Mm-hmm.
What's something you recommend?
Is this in relation to
Anything,
just
whatever.
anything?
Yep, anything you want.
I'm the least reliable source for recommendations. Anything like that.
That's all right. What's your favorite Disney movie?
Oh, I can't pick a favorite. That's like picking a favorite child.
That's all right. I'll let you off the hook.
Oh, thanks.
Do you have a favorite failure in any aspect of your life? So it could be, anything during the treatment or before that or any part of your life.
That's a tough one. I'm 100% perfect. I never mess up. I never mess up. No. I'm 100% the biggest klutz. I trip 5 times a day. Fun fact. Just this weekend I was taking pictures with my friend and we wiped out completely and I have huge scars. So I'm just the biggest klutz you will probably ever meet.
Yeah.
That's a big failure.
What is your definition of success, if you had to have one?
Doing what makes you happy would be my definition of success.
Yeah, happiness. That true happiness, no matter what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a life motto you live by, or what's some of the best advice that you've ever received, Hannah?
I've received so much good advice, honestly. I can't pick one, and honestly, I can't think of one, but just doing, like I said earlier, just doing what makes you happy. YOLO, you only live once.
I like it.
Gotta live every day.
Yeah, she's full of those wonderful zingers. Go big or go home. Fake it till you make it.
It's hard when you get put on the spot to just pick one. But
that is something I say on a daily, though. YOLO. It's kind of old, but
yeah, that's all right.
It's still good.
It's still good. One of the best. Do you have any habits that you've developed over the past couple years that's most improved your life?
Drinking water.
Yeah.
That was one thing. They're like, keep a water bottle beside you at all times. And I was like, no, that's disgusting. And I was so bad about drinking about water. He would yell at me every day. My dad would be like, hey, how much water have you drank? And I'd be like, a couple sips.
Yeah, we were pretty drill sergeant-ish.
Really drill sergeant.
Because they hammered at homes like, you can't drink enough water.
Yeah, and I'd go in there like, you're dehydrated, and I'm like, yeah, I know. But yeah, that's one thing that I just have learned to drink so much water, and now if I don't have a water bottle in my hand, I'm like, please give me some water.
Yeah, that's a good one. Do you guys have a favorite part of Wichita or a hidden gem in Wichita?
My favorite part in Wichita is honestly right when you drive in and you see the Keeper of the Plains and all the skylines and the bridge, of course, and just walking down the Keeper.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Is there anything you wish Wichita had that it doesn't? Or anything you would improve about Wichita if you could?
Disney World. We could get a Disney World.
Just plan it here.
I don't know. I always talk about how I want to move to a bigger city and I want to get out of here. It's too small. But honestly, if I had to change it, I wouldn't, because it's fine the way it is. It's like very unique to itself, and I love Wichita. I do like it. I don't hate it. I just want to be moved to a different city. And I talk to my dad about this all the time, and my mom's like, no, you're never leaving me. But my parents have accepted that I just would like to move. Yeah. But I do love Wichita for what it is.
For sure.
Yeah, and she embraces it, and she gets out in it, and she's involved, and continually does stuff within the city. So, A very good tie there.
So just the last one. What does Wichita mean to you?
I do have to think about this one.
That's fine. Take as much time as you need.
Well, of course, I mean, like, it's home, but when I go and I describe it to everyone that I'll meet in the future and in different cities, I'll just say, like, that's where I grew up. That's why it's so meaningful to me. I grew up in this city, and I just, it may seem small to some people. It's small to me, but, like, it's why it's so important. We're such a tight-knit city, and honestly, you could be on the east side and still see someone you know. Like, that's what's nice about it, is even though we think we're big, it's a small world. We know a lot more people than we think we do, and we can go out and still be friends with everyone. And I think that's also just like a Midwest thing, is that people are not afraid to say hi here and are very friendly compared to the East Coast. And so it's something that I do love about Wichita, is that we have little sayings like, oh, sorry. Say that a lot.
Seen t-shirts with that.
I do say that a lot, and I realize that now after I see all those t-shirts, but I'm like, I didn't realize that was like a Wichita thing. So it's kind of fun, but just the good home feeling.
It's a place that took care of her, nurtured her growing up, and took care of her in a time of crisis. Very thankful for that.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's all I have. Hannah and Scott, I really appreciate you guys coming on, tell your story a little bit, and it's motivating. So hopefully some people in Wichita and just all over can be inspired by your story and share your nonprofit, and hopefully more people can get involved.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wichita Life Podcast. If you enjoyed, please share it with a friend and leave a review on whatever podcast platform you use. I'm putting all of the podcasts on YouTube now as well, and we'll start doing video podcasts for some episodes in the future, so go to Wichita Life Podcast on YouTube and subscribe today. If you want to support the podcast, head over to our Patreon page. Thanks for the listen.